Welcome everybody from YouTube. This is week 7 and we've got a few people gathered here and we're going to carry on with our talk about forgiveness, okay? And unforgiveness and moving to forgiveness. So the scripture I chose tonight is from Luke. And Luke was a physician and he was a contemporary of Apostle Paul. And so he was very instrumental in helping with the early churches, getting them established. He would travel around with Paul and get, and help with the churches. So Luke also wrote the book of Acts as well as the book of Luke, which is in one of the Gospels. And that's after Jesus died and was resurrected and, returned and was among the disciples again, and then the Pentecost and so on. So that's kind of the book of Acts. So, the actual scripture is Luke 6. We're going to read 2 verses from that. And it's Luke 6:37 is the first one. And then 42. I haven't had a computer all week, so I didn't bother handwriting this out, so I just thought I'll read it to you from the Word. And this is taken, the context of this is just after the Beatitudes, so it's during the Sermon on the Mount, and this is all red letter words, meaning these are the words that Jesus spoke. I'm imagining that Luke, took notes while he was there and then transcribed them at a later date. So, and Jesus is basically telling people how to live their lives in this section, what to do, what not to do, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and so on. So he says, "Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." So again, this idea that when we forgive, we are forgiven. Okay? And then he goes into this interesting analogy that he has, and he says, "How can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me remove the speck that is in your eye'?" Now the word speck in Greek means flaw, okay? So how can you say to your brother, "Let me remove your flaw or the speck in your eye," when you yourself do not even see the plank that is in your own eye? Okay, and then it says hypocrites with an exclamation mark. So he must have really given it some gusto, because you don't see a lot of exclamation marks in the word. And then he tells us what to do. He says, "First, remove the plank from your own eye, okay, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck that is in your brother's eye." Okay, so ultimately, this was said a couple of thousand years ago, and ultimately what Jesus was talking about was what we would call in modern day projection, right? I'm seeing the speck in your eye, and I've got no idea about the plank inside of me. Okay? So how does projection work? Projection is when we are aware of some quality inside of us, and we judge it as wrong or as bad. And so we do whatever we can to repress it, suppress it, depress it, push it out of our awareness, so that we're like, "Oh no, that's not me." We're not even aware of it. But when we push it into the unconscious, it gets projected and it starts showing up in other people out there. Okay? And so, and then when we see it out there in them, we judge it again, right? And we go, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that about that person. That person is controlling. That person is this and that." And so we already start to distance a little bit. We start to pull back. We don't want to be around them. So love is already starting to get a bit compromised. And then if they do something to offend us, then that's it. Then we're not going to forgive them because they don't deserve it. They're this and that already. Okay? And so, but Jesus says, first, to get out of this, so like the precursors of unforgiveness then are judgment and condemnation, and then we get stuck in that grudgy unforgiveness. Okay? And Jesus says, first, take a look at your own stuff. take a look at the plank, which is a big flaw, versus a speck, which is a little flaw. Take a look at that first, so that you can see clearly about what the truth is about that little speck in another person's eye. Okay? So it's kind of like if I actually had a projector here beside me, a little film projector, and a screen out there somewhere, and there was a fly walking on the lens, right? Would it make sense for me to grab a fly swatter, run up to the screen and start slapping the screen? Would that make sense to get rid of that fly? No, right? The answer, and you people at home, the answer is no, right? I got to get it off the projector. I got to go tick, tick, and get that fly off the projector. There's no use slapping the image. There's no use slapping the reflection. That's not going to do any good, right? So what we see out there is the reflection. This is the projector. Our unconscious, it's showing us what's in our unconscious mind. So if we don't like stuff out there, we need to look inside and see what's going on, right? Okay. So I want to talk about what stops us from forgiving. I want to start there and then talk about what is forgiveness. Okay? When people come into my office as clients, quite often they'll say, so-and-so did this horrible thing to me, and I know that I need to forgive him or her, but I can't. I just can't forgive them. What do I do? And so I say, well, answer this question for me in your mind. If I forgive so-and-so, that means, and usually the first thing out of their mouth is, that means what they did was okay. If I forgive them, then somehow that means it was okay what they did. That is a common thought that we have running through our society for sure, okay? And so I'm here to tell you that's not true. That is a myth. Our forgiveness or unforgiveness does not determine whether what was done was right or wrong. That's determined by legal laws, that's determined by religious laws, moral laws, cultural laws and standards. That's what determines right and wrong. For example, if somebody runs a red light and demolishes your car, okay, and you're all upset about it, but then you decide, I'm going to let go, I'm just going to, get past this. Does that mean that running a red light is okay? No. Running a red light is still wrong, and you decide to move on anyway. But it doesn't change the wrongdoing. It was wrong, is wrong, and will be wrong forever. Running red lights in our society are wrong. They're against the law. Okay? That's what determines it. The other thing that comes up when I say, well, if you forgive someone, that means, and people say, well, that means I've got to go back into that toxic relationship and I got to take all that, guff from them again. I'm like, no. Because see, a lot of people use unforgiveness and their bitterness and anger like a shield. And like, okay, I'm going to just do that so that he can't hurt me anymore, she can't hurt me, and I've got this. And so I'm saying, I get that you don't want to get hurt anymore. But how about if we work on your self-esteem, self-confidence, and the big one is boundaries. You don't have to be in any kind of toxic relationship. Even if you forgive a person for all of the damage that was done, you forgive them, you can forgive them and say, and I choose never to be in that relationship again because I see that you're damaged, I see you're toxic, and I don't want to be there. But you can do that after you've forgiven them. Okay, you don't need to hang on to that, all the grudgy and all the heavy emotion against them. You can learn boundaries to do that. So those are two of the main reasons why people get stuck in unforgiveness. Okay, so just if you're a bit stuck, just to check and see if that's running, because both of those are myths. Okay, so let's talk about some of the qualities of forgiveness. When I look into the Greek words for forgive is a verb, it's an action, it's something we do. And it says things like set aside, let go, remit, submit, yield up, give over, okay? And what is it referring to? What I call our stuff. Now, stuff I use as an acronym. S is for our stories about what happened, okay? And for the sensations that we stir up in our bodies. The T is for all of our thoughts, our negative thoughts, our judgments, our perceptions. U is for the unforgiveness and all of what it leads to, the grudgy stuff. F is for feelings, and the other F is for just any other funky stuff that you happen to have going on with this person, okay? So it means packing up the whole kit and caboodle and setting it aside, omitting it somehow, remitting it, handing it off to God, Jesus, an angel, torching it, sending it down a gopher hole, putting cement on it, taking it to the bottom of the sea, whatever works for you metaphorically, because it's energy. And you can intend, energy follows intention, right? So you can intend for all of this stuff to be annihilated some way or another, to be gone, okay? So that's what forgiveness means, to set aside, let go, and so on. So forgiveness is a choice, it's a decision. And part of that decision is to decide to stop being the judge, the juror, and the jailer of other people. Okay? Because our ego loves to do that. You're wrong. That was bad. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. I'm not going to speak to you anymore. That'll teach you. I'll show you you can't treat me like that. This is ego. And remember, our ego is fear-based, all right? And it likes to play God. It's not our place to do that. The ego doesn't have the capacity. I mean, look what happened to Lucifer. He's trying to play God, and pride goes before the fall, and he got booted out of heaven. So it's, and our ego is very much, very similar to that. And so at some point we go, I am going to stop listening to that thing. I'm going to stop making that my master. I'm going to stop. When I notice I'm doing that, I'm just going to stop doing that. I'm going to have enough discipline to say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay? Not my deal. And the other choice is, at some point, love needs to be becomes so important to you, as well as, and we were speaking earlier in the class tonight about it feels better when we're aligned with love. It just doesn't feel good to be grudgy with people. So, just to do it for ourselves, right? And so to say, well, to have love flowing in my life is so important that when I notice anything that's blocking it, I'm going to get on it and get rid of it. I'm going to do something. I'm going to learn how to forgive. I'm going to choose to stop judging everybody. Because now that I see that it's blocking love, which ultimately hurts me, I'm going to stop doing it. Okay? Because we need to recognize that our freedom and our well-being depends on what we do with this stuff that we're creating and holding on to. We don't have to wait for the other person to come crawling up on their knees and beg for forgiveness and all that stuff. We don't need that. I mean, it's nice if they come and say they're sorry and, it's easier, but we don't need it. Our freedom can't depend on what other people are doing. We can choose to let it go ourselves, okay, and do something with it ourselves. Because here's the deal, okay? Got another prop here. Whoops. Did you know that I make these props myself?
Yeah.
I don't, you can't buy these things, right? Okay. So this is a sample of unforgiveness, right? Because when you're not forgiving, I don't know if you can see that, there we go. When you're not forgiving, it's okay, Michael, we'll just leave it there. When you're not forgiving, there are two worms on the hook, right? And guess who is the middle, or who is the inside worm? Everybody put your hand up. You guys at home, you're the inside worm. So I'd like you to say, when I don't forgive, I'm the inside worm. Exactly. So that's the thing is, For tonight, our focus is going to be getting this guy off our hook and letting him or her go back and let God deal with them, okay? Then it frees us up to get ourselves off, okay? So we're getting them off our hook. Not to say that what they did was okay. That's still between, their wrongdoing is their karma, their stuff they need to work through, okay? So, yeah. So I heard a very interesting statement. I was a couple of years ago, last December for a couple of weeks, I spent some time with a Dr. Reverend Henry Wright down in Thomaston, Georgia, a couple of hours south of Atlanta. He runs a huge organization called Be in Health down there. And he has done he's in his 70s now, but he's done a remarkable job of tracking the spiritual roots of over 500 different diseases. And so he's tracking them from being part of the fear matrix, being part of the enemy, satanic, Luciferian thoughts. Remember, coming into our soul, then into our brain as dendrites, and affecting our DNA, and then eventually showing up as different types of diseases. It's fascinating information. Maybe someday I'll teach you a little bit about it. But one of the things that he said was, unforgiveness is like a gateway drug. And I thought, that's interesting. That got my attention. And so, and what he meant by that is, it starts off as, unforgiveness, and someone wrongs us. I call it an offense occurs, an an offense just occurred, right? And then we start running it over our mind, like, how dare they say that in front of all the people at the meeting, and they're calling me down, and da-da-da. And our brain starts rolling it over, right? Then if we don't do anything about it, that will roll into resentment. And we start getting some emotions. We start getting a knot in our stomach when we think about it, or our shoulders tighten up or something. And we start really resenting, and we continue with this story. And if we carry on, then that resentment can develop into anger and just real solid emotion. It was like, they're wrong, they're bad, they should never have done that, right? Because remember, unforgiveness blocks love, right? We've got two poles in this society. We've got love, we've got fear. If love is blocked, what's left? Only fear, right? So fear can just get in and start just driving this, right? And then, when we're angry at someone, we get snippy, we get short. Maybe we look at their phone, not answering that call. We start screening our calls and so on. And if anger is left unchecked, we don't do anything about it, we just stick to our story, then that eventually turns into bitterness. Bitterness is like chronic anger. And at that point, we are so sure that we're right and they're wrong, and we're just going to stick to it because we're going to wait. They have to come to us, and we're not willing to do much about it when we're bitter. We're not motivated, okay? We start losing that motivation. And then again, if left unchecked, we can get into retaliation and even violence. You hear people keying somebody's cars, or smashing their window, or slicing their tires, or even just not speaking to each other. I'm not going to speak to you. I won't, I'm not going to, go where you are, that kind of thing. And if left unchecked, then the last place it can go to is we can go right into hatred and actually murder. And it can be physical murder sometimes, or murder them in our mind. I wish they were dead. We might be gossip. We might be murdering them with our tongue to other people, spreading gossip and lies about them. And it's like there's not enough room on this planet for that person and me. I'm not going to go to the same organizations anymore because I can't stand the thought of even seeing them. Okay, so this is how unforgiveness can just snowball, because it's only got fear driving it because love is blocked, right? About this particular situation. Okay? And so down in the Be in Health, the very first thing they do with everybody is help them look at unforgiveness. Okay? Like there's lots of different spiritual roots, but unforgiveness across the board, they do that with everybody. Who have you not forgiven? Who have you still got some stuff with? Okay? Similar to what we did last week. Let's make a list and let's start working on it. And there's been some remarkable, like there's hundreds of testimonies of people who have had miraculous cures when they finally forgave that their mother, their father, that person who raped them, whatever it was, okay? And, you know, they go down there, they're in third stage cancer or whatever, and they truly forgive at a heart level, and they come back and the doctor says, well, your tumor's gone, what happened? This is impossible, you know, that kind of thing. And it's because they forgave, okay? Other people, forgiveness gets them started, but then they've got to do some of the other spiritual roots as well. They've got to do some more work. But everybody across the board, first thing they do is unforgiveness. Start forgiving. Get that unforgiveness block out of there, because it is the gateway. It's the gateway to the rest of it. Okay? That's how important getting past our grudges is for our own well-being. Like you said earlier, we do this for ourselves so we can have a better life. And then if we've got a better life, then we can be more loving with others, and on it goes, right? So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to start, I'm going to go through it, and piece by piece, and then we'll do it as a group slower afterwards. So you can just listen to what it is. I'm going to explain it for the people at home, and I'm going to suggest that you pause at certain points and actually do what I've asked you to do to get the most out of this. Obviously you will or you won't, but anyway, and I'll tell you when a good time would be to pause. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, the people that were here last week, and if you listen to the video, we've got a list. We made a list of people. We thought about people from, you know, our younger years, from our teens and so on. Family, extended family, parents, teachers, co-workers, boyfriends, girlfriends, that kind of thing. And as we thought of them, notice, is there any stickiness? Do we contract? Is there like, is there an uck there? Is there like a distancing there that we don't want to deal with? And we wrote their names down. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to just pick one person so that we can learn this process with. And then once you've got an experience of the process, and of course you can go back and do some more people on this, on your list. And I'd suggest that you pick a person kind of in the mid-range where there's definitely some grudgy stuff going on, but maybe not the most horrendous thing that ever happened to you, because we're learning a process here. I'd like you to have a little bit experience with the process before you start tackling some major incident. So something on a scale of 0 to 10 of, 4, 5, 6, some kind of a middle juicy one, okay? So we're going to write their name down, and then I'm going to ask you to think about what is it that this person did. What was the offense? Did they suck you into some kind of deal and you lost a bunch of money, or did they just steal your money, or were they inappropriate with your partner, or what was it? What was that offense? And then ask yourself the question, what qualities in them led them to behave that way? So for example, maybe at work you've got a real micromanager, okay, and they're just on you all the time. Do this, do that. Oh, you didn't dot the I. Well, what is the underlying quality that drives that? Control. They're a control freak, or they're just control, right? Or maybe somebody's, I promise I'll never do it again, and la 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 la, and then they do it again. Well, the quality there is they're liars. This person is a liar. They lie, okay? And so those are qualities, things like unkindness, mean, nasty, critical, judgmental. Those are qualities that lead people to behave in certain ways that can offend us, okay? And then you write 3 statements You write the person's name. I'm going to use Fred because there's no Freds here, and my apologies to any Freds that might be there. Fred is a liar. Okay? Fred is controlling. Fred is critical. You just write 3 statements about Fred. So this would be a good chance for you guys to pause and actually do that piece of it. Okay? Then the next thing we're going to do is put a comma after your statement, and we're going to add 3 little words to it. Just like me. Okay? So Fred is a liar. Just like me. Huh. We're going from speck to plank now, right? And then we're going to take each quality, like liar, and we're going to write 3 more statements about ourselves. Yeah, I lied to so-and-so, or I lied about this, and I lied about that, and we're going to own when we ourselves have been liars, when we ourselves have been control freaks, when we ourselves have been mean or nasty or critical or judgmental. We're going to take it back home. We're going to own this plank. This is taking a look at the plank in our eye. Okay? So now we've got 9 statements, because we're going to do 3 for each quality that we judge in Fred. We're going to put 3 examples of how we do the same thing ourselves. Okay? So again, folks at home, this would be a good time to push pause and actually get your 9 statements written. Okay? And then the next piece of it is, once we've taken a really good look at that, just doing that process is going to start some shifting going on. And because real forgiveness comes from a deep place of knowing sameness. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Real forgiveness comes from a deep place of knowing the sameness between me and my offender. Okay, really getting that. Wow, just like me. Okay? And then, because forgiveness is a choice, we're going to make some declarations. I'm going to use some even though statements that we did in week 1 to make some statements. There's going to be 3 statements. And so I'll read them to you. And we're not, again, with you guys here, we'll do them together in a bit, but I'm just going to read them so the folks at home know what they are, okay? So, and when you're doing it, you're going to sit down and put a chair in front of you and imagine that Fred, or whoever the person is that you've got this grudge going with, is sitting in front of you. Okay, you can put their name on a piece of paper, you can put their picture there if you want, but just intend that that's the person you're talking to, and you're going to sit down and talk to them. And so I'm going to just read, and it doesn't have to be exactly these words, but the gist of these words, okay? So Fred, even though you and I are both, and then whatever those 3 words were, liars, okay? We're both mean, we're both critical, we're both controlling. You'd fill in those blanks yourself, okay? And have hurt others sometimes, which is wrong. So even though we've both done that, the truth is we're both doing the best we can given the thoughts that we've chosen to believe over our life. Okay, so that's statement number 1. We're both the same here. Okay. Then the next statement is, Fred, even though you stole money from me, or whatever the offense is, so you would name it specifically. Even though you were inappropriate with my wife, even though you called me out in front of my peers, you made me look like a fool, whatever the offense is, okay, that offense was, is, and will always be absolutely wrong. Like what you did was wrong. Okay, that's just kind of for the record, that was wrong. Okay. However, the truth is, I've decided to stop being your judge, jury, and jailer. And I've also decided that love is more important to me than holding grudges. Okay? And so I've decided to pack up all this toxic stuff, these stories, these thoughts, this unforgiveness and feelings, the whole kit and caboodle. I've decided to pack it all up and get rid of it. I've decided to hand it off to, and then you can, whatever process you want to do, you can fill that in. I've decided to burn it. I've decided to give it to Jesus. I've decided to put it down a gopher hole, or whatever it is you decide to do, right? So this is where you're going to personalize it when you're actually doing it on your own, okay? So, and this would be another place. And then what you do is you imagine actually doing that. You use your power of your intention and imagination, and you pack it all up and remit it, omit it, submit it, set it aside, do something with it. And when that feels complete, then the final statement is, Fred, it is done. I forgive you. Okay? So that's what the process looks like, and we'll get into that in a minute. And so for a little bit of homework that ideally you will do for the rest of your life, okay, is every time you hear your brain, the programmed, conditioned patterns in your brain judging somebody, and it could be simply as, somebody cuts you off, whoa, what a lousy driver, okay? Add those 3 little words, just like me. Because we've all been lousy drivers at some point in time, right? If you will add those words every time you notice judgment, then that's going to stop a lot of this, it'll stop a lot of the need for forgiveness, because you haven't started down that path. So just like me, just like me, just like me. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in again. Thank you for sticking it out to the very end, and God bless you on your forgiveness journey. Good evening. Amen. See you again. Bye-bye.